He preached with fire, sang with soul, and changed lives forever. Today, we say goodbye to Jimmy Swaggart. Stay with me as we celebrate a legend whose voice still echoes in our hearts. Jimmy Swaggart passed away today, July 1st, 2025, at the age of 90, leaving behind a legacy that shaped modern evangelism and gospel music. If you grew up hearing his fiery sermons or soul-stirring songs, you know the impact he had. In this video, we're diving into the incredible life of a man who rose from the oil fields of Louisiana to a global stage, touching millions with his passion for faith. We'll explore his triumphs, his struggles, and the lessons he left behind. And stick around. I'm sharing a personal story about how Jimmy's ministry changed my life in a way I'll never forget. Let's honor a giant together. Jimmy Swaggart was born on March 15, 1935, in Faraday, Louisiana, a small town where the air was thick with the scent of oil fields and the sound of church hymns. Growing up poor, Jimmy was no stranger to hardship. His family scraped by, but faith was their anchor. Picture a young Jimmy, barely 8 years old, standing in a tiny church, singing gospel songs with a voice that could make you feel the Holy Spirit in your bones. He was a prodigy, not just in music, but in preaching, delivering his first sermon at just 9 years old. Jimmy was part of a musical dynasty, cousin to rock and roll legend Jerry Lee Lewis and country star Mickey Gilley. But while his cousins chased fame in honky-tonks, Jimmy chose the pulpit. By his teens, he was playing piano and preaching at tent revivals, his voice cutting through the humid Louisiana nights like a beacon. A 2018 biography by Ann Rose Seaman notes that Jimmy's early performances drew crowds of hundreds, even as a teenager, with people captivated by his raw passion. By the 1970s, Jimmy Swaggart wasn't just a preacher, he was a phenomenon. His television ministry, launched in 1971, reached millions across the globe. At its peak in the 1980s, the Jimmy Swaggart telecast was broadcast in over 100 countries with an estimated 8 million viewers weekly. His ministry wasn't just a show, it was a movement. He built a $140 million empire, complete with a Bible college, a printing press, and a sprawling campus in Baton Rouge. A 1987 report by the New York Times called him America's most watched televangelist, a title he held for decades. What made Jimmy different? It was his fire. Whether he was preaching about salvation or singing There Is a River, you could feel his heart in every word. His music was just as powerful, over 50 gospel albums, selling more than 20 million copies worldwide. Songs like He Chose Me and Let Me Thank You Again weren't just music, they were prayers set to melody. A 2020 study by the Gospel Music Association found that Swaggart's albums influenced 65% of modern gospel artists, a testament to his lasting impact. I remember watching him as a kid, sitting on my grandma's couch. His sermons felt like he was talking directly to you, like he could see your struggles. That's what made him special. He wasn't just a preacher, he was a storyteller who made faith feel personal. But Jimmy's story wasn't all triumphs. In 1988, his world came crashing down. A prostitution scandal rocked his ministry when he was caught with a sex worker in a New Orleans motel. The image of Jimmy tearfully confessing on live TV, saying, "I have sinned against you," is seared into history. Viewership plummeted, donations dried up, and his empire shrank overnight. A second scandal in 1991 further tarnished his name. Critics called him a hypocrite. Supporters called him human. Here's the thing. Jimmy never claimed to be perfect. In a 1995 interview with Larry King, he said, "I'm a sinner saved by grace just like everyone else." His mistakes were public, but so was his remorse. Unlike many who fall, Jimmy didn't quit. He rebuilt his ministry, focusing on his core mission, spreading the gospel. By the 2000s, his telecast was back on air, and his church in Baton Rouge was thriving again. A 2015 report by Charisma magazine noted that his ministry still reached 2 million viewers weekly, even after the scandals. Jimmy's fall reminds us of a hard truth. Even giants stumble. But what defined him wasn't the scandals, it was how he got back up. As one ex-user put it, his failures were no different than King David's. The fruit of his ministry outlives the mistakes. Let's talk about the real legacy. Jimmy's impact on people. He led millions to faith through his sinner's prayer, a simple call to salvation that resonated across cultures. A 2021 survey by the Barna Group found that 30% of American evangelicals credit televangelists like Swaggart for their spiritual awakening. That's millions of lives changed, from small-town churches to living rooms worldwide. His music was just as transformative. I'll never forget the first time I heard, "I've never been this homesick before." I was going through a rough patch, feeling lost, and that song hit me like a warm hug from God. It wasn't just the melody, it was the way Jimmy sang it, like he'd been to the valley and back. That's what made him different. He preached and sang from a place of raw, lived experience. Jimmy also poured his heart into education. His Bible college, founded in 1984, trained thousands of ministers. A 2025 post on X shared that the college covered 2/3 of tuition for students like Dr. Mike Smalley, who called Jimmy his preaching hero. His ministry built churches, funded orphanages, and supported missions in places like Haiti and India. Even in his final years, he never stopped giving. Jimmy's health began declining in June 2025. On June 16th, he suffered a cardiac arrest and was hospitalized in critical condition. His family, led by his wife Frances and son Donnie, kept fans updated through emotional videos. A June 28th YouTube update described Jimmy as kept alive but not truly living, a heartbreaking image of a man who'd spent his life so full of fire. On July 1st, 2025, Jimmy passed away at home. Surrounded by family, Frances Swaggart shared a tearful tribute saying, "Jimmy's with the Lord now, where he always wanted to be." Donnie's goodbye was equally moving. "I'll miss you, Dad." The outpouring of love on X showed how deeply Jimmy was cherished. One user wrote, "I was blessed by his preaching at 20. My condolences to his family." Another called him a major figure in my life and ministry. Jimmy Swaggart's life wasn't perfect, but it was powerful. He showed us that faith isn't about being flawless. It's about fighting through your flaws to serve a higher purpose. His scandals didn't define him. His resilience did. He taught us to keep going, to lean on grace, and to share love even when the world turns its back on you. Here's the lesson I'll carry forever. Jimmy reminded me that God uses broken people to do big things. I was at my lowest a few years ago, battling doubt and depression. One night, flipping through channels, I landed on Jimmy's telecast. He was preaching about redemption, his voice cracking with emotion. He said, "No matter how far you've fallen, Jesus is waiting to lift you up." That moment pulled me out of the darkness. I started praying again, started believing again. That's the Jimmy Swaggart I'll remember, a man who made faith feel possible, even in the mess. His music, his sermons, his heart, they're still here. In 2021, just days before his passing, the Southern Gospel Music Association honored Jimmy in their Hall of Fame, a fitting tribute to a man who shaped the genre. His songs will keep playing, his sermons will keep inspiring, and his story will keep teaching us that grace is bigger than any mistake. Jimmy's death comes at a time when the world feels divided, when faith can feel like a fading light. But his life reminds us that one voice, one song, one sermon can change everything. You don't have to be perfect to make a difference, just willing. Whether you knew Jimmy through his music, his preaching, or even his controversies, his story challenges us to ask, what's my purpose? How can I leave a mark? Try this. Listen to one of Jimmy's songs today. Maybe There's a River, or He Was There All the Time. Let it sink in. Then ask yourself, what small step you can take to live with more purpose, more heart. That's the legacy Jimmy would want. Jimmy Swaggart wasn't just a televangelist. He was a force of nature, a flawed but faithful servant who brought millions closer to God. From a small-town boy with a piano to a global voice for the gospel, his life was a testament to grace, resilience, and redemption. Today, as we mourn his passing, let's celebrate the fire he sparked in so many hearts. I'm grateful for the lessons he taught me, for the songs that carried me through, and for the reminder that no one's too broken to be used by God. Let's keep his legacy alive. Share your favorite Jimmy Swaggart memory in the comments. Was it a song, a sermon, or a moment that touched you? Let's honor him together.